Okay, imagine this scenario for a second. You get an alert pinging on your screen. A Russian military submarine, one designed specifically to be stealthy, has just surfaced unexpectedly.
Right where you least expect it.
Exactly. In one of our world's most critical waterways, the English Channel approach, right near Brittany, France, and almost instantly, a French Navy frigate is there, tracking it.
High stakes from moment one.
That's the picture. And that single moment, this NATO ship watching this Russian sub, it really opens a window onto the whole European security situation right now. Was it just bad luck? A breakdown?
Or maybe something more calculated. A message being sent.
Or, as Russia claimed, simply, well, business as usual. Routine trip.
And that's why we need this deep dive, isn't it? Because answering that means looking beyond just the submarine, the Novorossiysk. That surfacing incident, it hit an already tense environment.
Right.
Our sources here, they range from official NATO maritime command releases, Russian state news like TASS, the legal documents, the UN CLOs, plus intelligence chatter from European security agencies. They all paint a much bigger picture.
So our goal today is to pull these threads together for you. We want to see how things happening at sea, in the air, and, well, in the shadows with intelligence work, how they all connect.
And how a seemingly routine, maybe even legally required transit can become this instant geopolitical flashpoint. It's about getting past the headline.
Okay, let's start with the facts on the ground, or rather, in the water. The date was October 9th.
Correct. And the sub, the Novorossiysk, it's a diesel-electric attack sub, a part of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, a Kilo class.
Kilo class. Those are the ones sometimes called the black hole subs, right? Because they're supposed to be super quiet.
That's the one, designed for stealth. So seeing it on the surface near Brittany, tracked by that French frigate, well, that immediately got people talking.
Yeah, I bet. If it's built to be invisible, seeing it is kind of the opposite of what you'd expect. So the first assumption floating around was, what? Some kind of serious problem, an emergency.
Exactly. Initial speculation definitely leaned towards a forced surfacing, maybe a major malfunction. But Russia pushed back on that narrative, and they did it fast.
How so?
Through their state news agency, TSS, they put out statements from the Black Sea Fleet calling any talk of malfunctions false and unfounded, flat denial.
So what was their official explanation then?
They framed it as completely routine, a simple interfleet transfer, moving the sub from the Mediterranean likely up towards the Baltic or Northern Fleet bases.
Yeah.
And crucially, they said it surfaced entirely in line with international maritime law.
Okay, that distinction is huge. Forced surfacing versus following the rules.
Yeah.
But if it was routine and legal, why that specific route? I mean, sailing right past a major NATO country.
Well, this is where the rules of the road at sea come in. Specifically, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UN CLOs.
Ah, the Maritime Law Handbook.
Pretty much. And if that sub was indeed coming up from the Med heading north, its path would likely take it through the English Channel.
Which is famously narrow and, well, incredibly busy with shipping.
Exactly. And under UNCLS, the English Channel counts as an international strait, a key passage connecting different sea areas. The rule for submarines transiting such straits.
They can't be submerged.
Correct. They have to transit on the surface, and they have to fly their national flag. It's primarily a safety measure, to avoid collisions in crowded waters and just generally maintain order.
So the very act of surfacing might have been, legally speaking, unavoidable for them to pass through the channel.
It's certainly the argument Russia's making, and it aligns with UNCLOS requirements for that specific passage. They needed to surface there by law.
Okay. Legally, maybe they're on solid ground, following the rules. But, perception is everything. How does NATO see it when a potential adversary uses the rule book to park a very capable submarine right on their doorstep?
Especially this submarine.
Right. Let's talk about the Novorossiysk itself. Why is it significant? It's not just any old sub, is it?
No, definitely not. It's relatively new, entered service around 2014. But the really critical point is its weapon system. It's equipped with Calibre cruise missiles.
Calibre. Okay, for listeners who might not track naval tech closely, why does that name make military planners sit up and take notice?
Well, the Calibre system is Russia's modern long-range cruise missile. It's known for precision land attack capability. Think comparable to, say, the Tomahawk missile.
Okay.
We've seen it used effectively in recent conflicts, striking targets deep inside enemy territory from ships or submarines far out at sea. So when a submarine known for its stealth does surface, legally or not, and it's carrying that kind of long-range strike power, it sends a message, even if unspoken. The law says, show yourself, but the weapons on board say, look what I can reach. Precisely. It turns a legal requirement for transparency into a strategic display. They're following the letter of the law, UNCLS, but using that moment of required visibility to showcase a serious naval strike capability right in, as you said, NATO's front yard.
That really highlights the tension, doesn't it? Adhering to the rules, but weaponizing the adherence itself.
That's the core of the ambiguity here.
Okay, so that perfectly sets up the other side of the coin. NATO's reaction, they didn't exactly keep quiet about seeing the sub.
No, they didn't. NATO Maritime Command put out statements pretty quickly, confirming the French Navy was conducting surveillance of the alliance's maritime approaches. They wanted it known they were watching.
Standard procedure for them, signaling vigilance.
Yes, it's part of their deterrence posture. Show you're aware, show you're capable of tracking. But the context here, the timing, is what really ramps things up.
Because this wasn't happening in a vacuum. What else was going on?
The very same week the Novorossiysk made its appearance, NATO kicked off its major annual nuclear readiness exercise.
Steadfast noon. I remember seeing headlines about that. That's a big deal.
A very big deal. This year, led by the Netherlands, involving, I think the source said 71 aircraft from 14 different allied nations.
And it's specifically about nuclear weapons procedures.
That's right. The exercise is designed to test and certify all the procedures involved in handling, securing, and notionally deploying nuclear weapons, particularly the air-delivered bombs that some NATO allies have as part of the sharing agreement.
So we're talking about fighter jets practicing escort missions, refueling, maybe even simulating loading procedures at secure bases?
Exactly. It involves all those complex logistics. It's basically a full system check of their airborne nuclear deterrent capability. Highly visible, highly sensitive.
Okay, so picture this. You've got this massive NATO nuclear drill simulating the ultimate deterrent, running at the exact same time a Russian submarine carrying its own potent long-range missiles surfaces legally but very visibly nearby.
It creates a feedback loop, like you said earlier. Every action, even one that might be perfectly legal or routine on its own, suddenly gets interpreted through the lens of this heightened military posture on both sides.
Things get amplified.
Hugely amplified. And NATO leadership acknowledged this context directly. The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, explicitly connected the Steadfast Noon exercise to what he called a deteriorating European security environment.
That phrase, deteriorating environment, sounds quite pointed. It suggests this submarine incident wasn't the cause of the tension, but maybe a symptom of something bigger.
I think that's exactly the implication. It signals that the reasons for heightened alert go way beyond just this one submarine in the channel. We need to look at other domains.
Right. So the unease wasn't just confined to the sea lanes. What other intelligence or security issues were bubbling up that made this naval transit feel like such a potential flashpoint?
Well, the sources point to ongoing issues, particularly in the air domain and with intelligence operations on the ground. For a while now, Western militaries have been on alert due to a pattern of mysterious drone incursions into NATO airspace.
Drones. That seems to be a recurring theme lately. Are we talking military drones or?
It's often unclear. Some are likely commercial drones, but the concern is where they're flying repeatedly spotted near sensitive military bases, training areas, critical infrastructure. It raises obvious flags about surveillance or probing defenses.
And officials suspect Moscow might be behind some of this activity.
Attribution is always tricky with these things. But Western officials have publicly suggested, that at least some of these drone incidents fit a pattern of Russian activity aimed at, testing responses or gathering intelligence. It forces NATO air defenses into a constant state of vigilance, just tracking these small, sometimes hard-to-detect objects.
Okay, so you have this background noise of airspace probes. Then the sub appears. But the sources also mention something more direct, more hands-on espionage charges in Poland.
Yes, and this really elevates the concern. It moves from military posturing and potential surveillance to active, covert operations inside NATO territory. Polish authorities announced charges against 2 Russian nationals for espionage, basically accusing them of spying for Russian intelligence.
Spying is one thing, but wasn't there something even more alarming alleged against one of them, identified as Igor R.?
That's correct. The allegations against Igor R. went beyond just information gathering. He was accused of actively plotting to build and dispatch a parcel bomb.
A parcel bomb? Wow. Did the sources give any detail on what kind of device?
They did, and the details are quite chilling. It was reportedly intended to contain military-grade explosives. The report specifically mentioned nitroglycerin and detonators, and it was designed as a shaped charge bomb.
Okay, technically, what does shaped charge mean? Why is that significant?
Well, unlike a standard bomb that explodes outwards in all directions, A shaped charge focuses the blast energy into a concentrated jet. It's technology often used in things like anti-tank weapons or for breaching obstacles because it can penetrate armor or concrete.
So not something an amateur typically cooks up in their garage.
And not at all. Building an effective shaped charge requires specialized knowledge and access to specific, often military-grade materials. Finding a plot involving such a device points towards potentially state-level training or support, not just, random extremism.
That detail really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? From espionage concerns to potentially preparations for actual physical attacks orchestrated by agents inside an allied country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this Polish case didn't happen in total isolation either. The sources connected back to a series of incidents earlier in 2024 involving suspicious, sometimes explosive, packages turning up at courier depots in the UK, Germany, and Poland.
I remember reports about that. Disruptions to delivery services?
Yes. And Western security officials, based on their intelligence, had already been pointing fingers towards Russia for those incidents as well, suggesting an effort to sow chaos and disrupt logistics. Of course, the Kremlin denied involvement in those cases too.
So if you zoom out and look at the whole picture, you've got the naval presence, maybe legally sound, but highly visible with the Novorossiysk. You've got these persistent, sort of deniable drone activities probing airspace. And then you have these alleged plots on the ground involving espionage and actual bombs.
It paints a picture of pressure being applied across multiple fronts simultaneously: sea, air, and land, including covert intelligence actions. It creates, as you called it, a real security pressure cooker.
So the key takeaway here for you, the listener, is understanding this environment. Even if, let's imagine, the Novorossiysk genuinely did have a mechanical issue and had to surface.
Right, even if it was pure coincidence.
The surrounding context, the caliber missiles it carries, the massive NATO nuclear exercise happening at the same time, the background noise of drone flights, and these really serious espionage and bomb plot allegations, all of that meant the surfacing was almost guaranteed to be seen as provocative, regardless of the actual reason.
Absolutely. The threshold for alarm was already incredibly low because of everything else going on. The pre-existing tensions in other domains basically ensured this maritime event became an instant flashpoint.
It really shows how deterrence works or doesn't work when the whole system is running hot. It's not about isolated incidents anymore.
No, it's about the accumulation, the sheer density of events happening across different areas all at once. One incident fuels the interpretation of the next.
So how does Moscow publicly frame this overall posture? You mentioned President Putin made comments around that time.
He did. Speaking in Tajikistan, he didn't address the submarine incident directly, but he made a broader statement. He said Moscow would continue to assert its maritime and security interests.
Standard assertion of national interest.
Yes, but he added a very specific qualifier: within the bounds of international law.
Ah, there's that phrase again. Within the bounds of international law.
It's a critical piece of phrasing. It allows Russia to conduct actions that have significant strategic impact, like sailing a missile-capable sub through the channel, but to claim essentially legal immunity because they are technically following the rules, like UNCLOS, it creates strategic ambiguity.
Which functions almost like diplomatic cover for actions that are clearly meant to send a signal.
Precisely. It puts the onus on others to react to the intent or the capability displayed, rather than the strict legality of the transit itself.
Okay, that leads perfectly into our final thought for you to consider, building directly on this idea of law versus strategic reality.
Go ahead.
We've talked about how maritime law, like UNCLOS, is fundamentally designed for things like safety, transparency, ensuring freedom of navigation through vital waterways like the English Channel. It's meant to facilitate peaceful passage.
Yes, that's the intention behind those rules.
But what does it mean when a nation takes those very rules designed for openness and safety, and uses compliance with them as the very mechanism to execute a strategic display, to deliberately make visible its most advanced naval strike capabilities right in a neighbor's face during a period of extremely high tension?
It weaponizes the law itself, doesn't it?
It seems to. It turns legal compliance into a form of strategic signaling, maybe even coercion. It forces the other side, NATO in this case, into a difficult position. Do you react to the action itself, the clear display of military power, or do you accept the justification based on the legal paperwork, the adherence to UNCLOS?
And that ambiguity, that tension between the letter of the law and the strategic message being sent, that becomes a friction point in itself. It's something to keep in mind whenever you see reports of these kinds of maritime encounters in the future. The law says one thing, the context might be saying something entirely different.